Hi guys, in this video we're going to make a Doug Hyde themed cake around his piece that's the ice cream van. And I'm going to start by making some of the characters so they've got a little bit of drying time while we work on the cake. So I'm going to roll an oval in white modelling paste. I've got the Renshaws one here. You can use fondant with Tylers if you prefer. I'm going to draw in with a modelling tool a big smile, and I'm just going to poke in a couple of little holes for the eyes. And just using some edible dust, I've got a black one here. We're just going to put this in the eyes and the mouth. I've got a dry brush because I want it to look a little bit shaded rather than a really neat straight line in it. Taken some red modelling paste and we're going to create a little bit of a body. So we're going to keep it quite basic in shape. And we're just rounding off that top bit so that a head will sit into the top of that. Then the bottom, we're just going to try and put a line in the middle. Cut off those round bottom bits. And I'm going to put that same line at the back as well as the front so it looks like legs. Just round that off a little bit with your fingers. We're going to go back to using our edible dust. So we've got rainbow dust in black here. Now I'll put links below to everything that we've used in the video. I'm dusting it anywhere that would be sort of a bit more shaded, a little bit under shadow. So between the legs. We've got some oval shapes for the feet, roughly oval. Flattened slightly at the top so that we can balance that body onto there. And then we can stick the head on the top. Now, if it doesn't stick, you can add a cocktail stick through the middle or spaghetti. Just make sure that nobody's going to eat it if that is the case. Pop him to dry, and then you can make as many characters as you like. Now, I've printed myself off a picture. It's just a little bit bigger than A4, so I've had to stick a couple of pieces together. And I'm going to cut around the basic shape. And I'm going to look at the length of this so I know how big to make my cake board. So I've marked out my cake board so that it's the same length as my picture that I've cut out. And I've made it about 6 inches wide. I'm just rounding off the front end a little bit for when we cut that out. And I've just rounded off those back corners. Now, I've got a thinner cake board, so I've stuck 2 together just to give it extra strength. Just going to check that it still fits. So actually I've made it a little bit smaller than the van. Now, I've pre-iced a cake board in green. Just make sure that you've got plenty of space around the rectangular shape that you've cut out for the ice cream van. I want plenty of space at this bottom bit for my little people to go. I've taken a piece of plastic cake dowel, so it's a hollow cake dowel. I've trimmed it into a few short pieces. Just make sure they're all the same height. I'm going to push these into the board so they all sit under my cake board. And I've marked on whereabouts I want those wheels to sit. And I want to make sure that my plastic things fit under where the wheels are going to go. And then I've got 2 additional ones in the middle for support. So once I've stuck those on there, I'm just covering my board in cling film just so that when I ice my cake, I'm not going to drop bits on that cake board. So I'm just pulling free those little plastic cake dowel bits that we've pushed in, and I'm filling each of the centre of those with royal icing. That's so that it sticks firmly to my cake board, and also the rectangular shaped one will also stick onto that. So I'll put that on there. So I've baked some square sheets of cake. Now it's a 12-inch square is this one, and I'm going to cut around a template that's the same size and shape as that cake board. I'm going to cover that in buttercream, and I'm going to add my first piece of cake. I've got quite a holy cake today. I think I mixed a bit too much air into it when I was mixing. So I'm just going to trim off any edges that were a little bit drier than the middle of my cake. And I'm going to layer up my pieces of cake. So I baked 2 squares of cake that were 12 inches tall. And I've cut these now so they all match size-wise with each other. And we're just going to layer these up till I've got it the height of my template. And I'm just going to hold my template against it and cut around the, sort of the front and back end of the ice cream van, making it curve on those top corners. I'm going to cover it in a thin layer of buttercream. Now normally I would put this in the fridge, but because I've put it on an iced board, I don't want my board to go tacky in the fridge. But I want quite a firm base, so I'm actually going to just go over the top of my buttercream now with some white chocolate ganache. Just go over till you've got a nice neat finish. Then you can cover it in some white fondant. So we can cover that in white fondant. Once that's on, you can go over it with a smoother, trying to get rid of any lumps and bumps, or as many of the lumps and bumps as you can. And we're just going to try and take that off at the bottom edge. So I'm pressing my smoother in quite deep at that base bit, and it's pressing it against my cake board, which is causing my fondant to tear off at that point there. Now we've got a little bit of creasing in the corner, but we're going to cover that up shortly. And I'm going to put a little dint where I want the bottom of the windscreen to start. I'm just using my cake smoother for this. And have a look at your template for any other lines and indents that you want in there. We'll put those in with the cake smoother. And then I've cut my windows out my template, so I can just check they fit onto my cake and whereabouts I'm going to position them. So let's draw around these now. I'm I'm just using a modelling tool, and then we're going to cut those out with a knife after. I don't have a template for the front window, so I will make that one up for myself as we go along, just putting in lines. So I've rolled some pale grey modelling paste, reasonably thin. I'm using modelling paste just so it's a little bit firmer than my fondant for this bit, because I don't want the window to stretch when I pick it up. We've cut around our window template, and then we're just going to dust a bit of colour on. So going back to that black edible dust again, concentrating it more around the edges, leaving the middle bit a little bit lighter in colour. And I'm going to stick that into the hole that we've cut out. If it doesn't stick, you can use a bit of edible glue or a little bit of water just behind that window. So I've got a little piece of white that's going to go across the bottom of that window that we've put in. And we're doing the same with all our front windows. This time I'm using a blue rather than a pale grey to push these in. It's a little bit untidy around the edges, but we're going to give the windows a frame, and that will neaten it all up for us. I'm just going to take my cling film off at this stage. And I've got little bits of ganache on there, so we'll just dust some of those out of the way. So we're going to start with our wheels, and I've got some black modelling paste that we've rolled out, and I'm just putting a piece of cling film on the top so that when we cut out the circles, it gives us a slightly more rounded edge. I've got a larger cutter on the outside, and then a smaller one is going to go inside that circle we've just cut. Now the larger cutter I'm also going to cut out in a plain thin strip as well. And then the smaller one we're going to cut out in white. I'm going to put the white one onto the larger black one, pushing a little dint in the middle. I'm just using the end of my rolling pin for this. Then that little ring that we've made is going to stick over the top. Now my bottom one's just slightly bigger than my top one, so you can trim around so that they match. And I've got a little piece of pale grey, again just a small circle cutter, and we're going to cut that out. Now I've trimmed just a little bit off the top of this wheel for the back wheel. And then the front wheel, I've done the same again, but I've left it a full circle. I've not trimmed any off. And you'll need to do the same on both sides of your van. Then we're going to use a pale pink fondant. I've got the Renshaw's fondant here. I'll put links in the description box below to everything I've used. I'm just going to roughly mark out where I want the rest, or where I want the other front piece to come to. Trim a little bit off the bottom of there that I don't need. Now I've rolled my second piece of pink quite thick, just to give the van a little bit more shape. And we're going to push that along there, so pushing it along that line that we've just created, and then trim that off either side. Just smooth off a little bit with your fingers. And then we've rolled another piece of pink that's long enough to go from the back to the front of our van, and we're going to stick that on to the side. So I've cut out a little bit around my back wheel trim, so I'm going to trim it where it meets the front, and then I'm also going to trim a little bit off the top so it slopes down towards that back wheel. Now we are going to cover up the edges in a minute as well. I'm just going to trim roughly around this front wheel, and we will neaten this up again shortly. Another pink strip closer to the top. Cut a little round edge at one side, trim it so it meets that bottom piece, and then trim it so it meets the piece at the front as well. I'm just going to push that together a little bit, and even more pink. So it's quite thick as the fondant on this bit, so you might find that you want to pull some of this off if you get a front piece of your van to eat. I wouldn't normally go as thick as this, but I did need to add a little bit more size to my cake. Just trimming around that wheel. And then I've just rolled thin a piece of pink that we can just put around the rim of that back sort of wheel arch, just neatening it up. We also want some grey, and this is going to run along the top of this pink piece to just about the top of our front wheel. And then another piece of grey just up there like that. Put a little light on the side. So again, a little piece of grey, and then a little piece of orange in the middle. I've got a long thin piece of black now that I've rolled to go around the windows. Just put a little bit of water around the edge of the window, and then you can put this all the way around, and do this for every window on your van. Now I forgot to mention I did put a couple of windows on the other side of my van as well. And I'm just going to run over my grey now with a little bit of silver edible paint. And then we'll put a bit more shading on this shelf in our window. And we're going to put a little rectangle of white at the back so it looks like the ice cream machine. Another little piece attached to that. And then some red and pink for like the little handle and a little sauce bottle. And then we've got a roll of white. Just make sure it's as long as the length of that big window that we've painted like the black and dark grey. I'm going to add pink stripes to it. And that's just going to rest across the top of our window. And we've got like a purpley colour, so we've just got a bit of purple and black mixed in for this one, for our body. And then a bit of a sausage shape in the same colour for for our first arm. Just keeping it simple for the hand. An oval of white. And then for this hand, again, we've got another oval of white. We'll just put a little slit in one side, creating a thumb and finger. And what I've done is created a little ice cream cone that I've let set in advance on a cocktail stick. And we're going to push the hand around that. And then we're going to add an arm, again in the purple, onto that, just so it's nice and rigid. And then we're going to push this cocktail stick into the cake. Now I've put some support below it to hold it up till it dries. Then we want a large oval for the head. And we're just going to draw in a big smile like we did on the character we did earlier. And then a couple of dots for the eyes. We'll dust it up with a little bit of black. Now I've already added one little dog to the front window, and let's add another one. So we've got a piece of brown for the body, and keep looking at a picture for guidance for where to put everything. So I've got 2 teardrops for the front paws, circle which will be under the chin, and then this unusual shape here for the top part of the head. A black circle for the nose, a little brown patch for one of the eyes. Now I've got a little bit of black and white fondant stuck in that one. Put a little hole in the place for each eye, and then we're going to give him a couple of little ears. We'll add a little bit of shading so it matches with the rest of the cake. Now we need some ice cream cones for the front of our van, so I've taken a cone like an orangey colour. Now to stick this in, rather than putting it on cocktail sticks, I just rolled 2 pieces of modelling paste and let them set hard. Then I could stick them into my ice cream cone, and then nice and solid. We'll just take a piece of white, curl that up for our ice cream on the top. And I've also put an extra band of the orange, can you see, just around the top of that cone. And as long as that modelling paste is set nice and hard, you can push that straight into the front of your cake. I've gone back to my little figure that I made at the beginning, and we're going to give him some arms. I've stuck a cocktail stick just in one side of the body, as if he's going to be reaching up for the ice cream. He's just got a little cylinder of red for one arm, a little white hand, mitten style hand on the end. We'll do the same on this other one, threading it onto that cocktail stick. Then I'm going to push it behind the arm on the purple guy, so it's actually connected where their hands are touching there. And then once that's dried, we can move away the support we've got in there. I'd had a play around at making some extra little characters, so you can add as many or as few characters as you like. Play around with whereabouts you want them to go on your board. Now it's a bit plain on the back, so let's give it some doors. Just draw them in with a modelling tool. And if you're more precise than me, you might want to use a ruler. Just draw in some windows. I'm going to put a couple of lights on the back, starting with a piece of grey. Then in each piece of grey we're going to put a ball of white, a ball of red and a ball of orange. And a couple of little red lights up near the top. Let's give it a bumper just in grey, just around that back bit there. And we'll put a little bit more black around the back of these windows. And you can spend a little bit longer neatening yours up than I have with mine. Now I've still got to add the pink to the other side of the van, but in the meantime I'm going to show you the front lights. So just a circle of grey with a slightly smaller circle of white. So we've got 2 bigger ones for the top lights and 2 smaller ones for the bottom. Then we want a piece of black for the middle. Then we want this to look like it's got a bit of a grill on the front of it. So I've got a piece of grey to go down the middle, and then we're going to roll some thin strips of grey that are going to come off that from either side. I'm going to stick a few of these on. And then I'm going to go all the way around the edge of that with a piece of grey. Put a little ball of grey over that join we've got, and another ball of grey up there. A little sausage shape of grey just underneath, so it looks like badges on the front of the van. A little rectangle, again, just a piece of white that's rolled out, put around that so it looks like a number plate. Then I've just put the white on the other side of the van, just the same as we did on the first side. We're going to add another bumper, and then we'll put a little black number plate on the front. Okay, so we've just got our figures resting, so I'm going to leave these overnight to set. Then I can remove those paint pots at the bottom. There it is, all finished. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to hit the thumbs up button and leave me a comment below. You can see more of my tutorials by clicking on the images on screen now. If you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button to stay up to date with my future tutorials. There are also links in the description box below where you can find me on Facebook, Instagram and more.